Hello and welcome to Chapter Chat with Sarah. Here we share true life stories. Some of these stories have been locked behind closed doors, hiding secrets. Some of those secrets so bad it will make you wonder how they even survived. We do not use real names, and that's to help protect identities. And it's not our intention to expose or hurt anyone. But the stories are real, and they are being told for all the right reasons. Here with us today is Nancy, and Nancy is one of the true life characters in my first book, Two Sisters and the Four-Leaf Clover. Nancy, this is a good time to ask you, what did reading the book reviews that were on Amazon and elsewhere mean to you personally after the book was published?
Well, it meant a whole lot because number one, we got the word out. People were interested and it caused them to want to continue reading. I know for myself, when I first got the book, I read it that night. I stayed in a hotel. I read it that night and finished it the next morning because it was just one of those things that I wanted to find out what came next. So I think for the interest of the people is for them to realizing that, these problems not only happened back then, but these problems are happening now. And now that there's a book out there that's published, if that book gets into the hand of one person from someone else that has read it, then, you have your followers there that can help people going forward in life with this type of tragedies that happen in their lives.
And you bring up a good point because a lot of the people that I talked to who read the first book said that they just couldn't put it down, that, even though it was shocking and it was horrible, it was that they just had to keep turning the pages chapter after chapter. And some of them, like you said, stayed up through the night reading it because they wanted to see how it was going to turn out. So how was it for you reading the book? And I think you kind of answered it, but was there anything that changed for you after the book? How did you feel? Did it help you personally?
Well, it done a couple of things. Reality uh, would be my first response because having to just be able to sit down and discuss the issues that I've tried to bury for years for different reasons. The reality of this is real kind of hit me. And with that being said, I think I probably cried through the whole book, except for maybe a few chapters. I had to read stories of my siblings and my mother and, my family. And so there's no happiness in it. So even with my story, knowing my story that I told, I just cried. I mean, it was very sad to me that this poor little girl then can be the person that I am today with everything that she's been through. And I'm not gonna lie, I mean, there's times when we have these type of times right here, it doesn't give me a sadness of something that I think or don't know if I've gotten over because I've pushed through all of that. But at the same time, the reality of it is it will never ever completely go away. There will always be something that will be a reminder of what I personally have been through. Then on the happy side of that, what I would say is that I see myself and my siblings surviving and being able to discuss the tragedies and the experiences that we had as children growing up. Some things we knew about each other, some things we didn't. So we found out things that we didn't know. That was a little shocking. But, the reality of it is it's just all real stuff that really happened. And to be where we're at today as a family is what means the most to me coming from this book, because I think there was some separation in there that we didn't discuss things with them because who knows what she knew or what he knew or whatever. So this allowed us to really communicate with one another and heal. And for that, that is the strongest thing that helped me is I will never be 100% healed, but I will say that I'm 99.9% healed.
Wow, that's a blessing in itself, truly. Let's talk about the second book, Healing Your Life One Leaf at a Time. And that's 19 chapters and it's 19 different people. And you are chapter 3 in that book. And this book came about because people who had read the first book started contacting me and saying that they too wanted to be able to tell their story. And so we began again. And again, like I said, you were chapter three. Something that impacted me, and that's kind of going back to the first book, but it plays up again in the second book. And that was you as a little girl. And this is just a really vivid picture for me standing at the front door of the house. It's a screen door. You're looking outside. You can see the trees. It's sunny. You want to go outside and play. But before you can go out and climb the trees and run around and be carefree, there was something that had to happen first. What was that?
Well, with anything that we wanted to do as children, and again, I'm only going to speak for myself. I had to do sexual favors with John, and because of that, um, it made you really not want to even play or even ask for anything because it was just, y- even as a child, I understood the difference between right and wrong. However, I also knew that if I didn't comply with what his orders were, that I would just be just standing there, still standing there. I would still be standing at the door today if I haven't done the things that I done. And it wasn't because I wanted to do them, it's because I had to do them. If I wanted any type of freedom, I had to submit it to his favors. And it's sad because you can't be a little girl. You can't go out and play with your baby dolls. You can't go out and play in the sun and run through the flowers or the field of gold or whatever was out there. So, it was every time. And I remember in my junior high year, we would go to school dances and basketball games and things of that nature. And in order for us to be able to do that, we had to do sexual favors. And there's so much of that that I remember. I remember him coming to a school dance. We were allowed to go to a school dance after the sexual favors, but he showed up at school dance. And, when I think back on this, I think, did he do that because he was jealous, thinking that someone else may see me as the real person, not something that's just hidden in a closet? Or was he just looking for a reason that he could come back and attack me and force me to do things that I knew I didn't want to do?
Yeah, unbelievable. So it happened from a small little girl all the way through your junior high and high school year. You ended up leaving at one age again, just for the listeners.
I moved with them. I was 17 at the time. 6 or 8 weeks went by. And when I turned 18, I left.
How did your faith in God help you to get through? And when did you first learn about God and praying and the Bible?
Well, my first experience with God, and again, I was young. My first experience was we had moved to another state, and we had been told about something that they called Bible school. And I didn't know what Bible school was, but I was game. So a bunch of the kids, and in the neighborhood, and some of my family wanted to attend. So sure, why not? So we went to Bible school, and I remember the little old lady. She had a little white bun on her head, and all wrapped up, just a little old mamaw is what I call her. She's just very fragile and very sweet and kind. And I remember going into this little wood house, little, I don't know, it's like an A-frame house with a little bell on it, almost like something you see on Little House on the Prairie. And she introduced us to God. She introduced us to the Bible, and we would have little games that she would play. Who can be the first one to find John 3:16, or Romans this or Romans that or whatever. And so it became a big excitement to me to get to know this magic person that I don't know, if that makes sense. I didn't know God, so I thought there was just this magic man. And then there were a few times that my parents had attended a church in a small town that we lived in just outside of the town. And I remember attending them a few times. But again, I didn't really know about God. And I was in a foster home and with some foster parents. Now that they did frequent church, but I wasn't interested. I just had my own faith that there's this little magic man and he's going to heal me and he's going to hear me and he's going to help me. And he's made me come this far, so he's going to continue to carry me. And then it was probably about, I was maybe 22 when I finally figured out who God was. And a friend of mine introduced me to her church, and I began going to church with her. And I actually got saved and I got baptized. And that's when I really figured out that there is no magic man up there. That's God. Um, that's where I want to be. I want to be there. So from that point on, as a young adult raising a child, I didn't really attend church much after that. She moved, and my ex husband was in the military. So we moved around a whole lot. So I never really got the opportunity to find a home church, which is what they call where you live at most of the time. But fast forward to 2005, and I know that's many years later. I didn't forget about who God was throughout those times whenever I had any struggles or questions, concerns, or things that I didn't think that I could handle. I would always say, okay, God, I know you're out there somewhere, and I know I'm not the best Christian, but I know you hear me because, God says once we're saved, we're always saved. So I'm saved, but I just don't practice that I'm saved. And now that I'm older, I know that God wants us to be Christ-like. He wants us to walk like Him, talk like Him, be good to people, do the great things that God's done for me. And so it was in 2005 that I went to this little country church here where we live now. And the spirit that I felt in that church was amazing. I knew then who God really was. And I like to think that if it wasn't for God or this little magic man, even when I was younger, I wouldn't be where I'm at today because, going through the life that I had and people not believing and, my parents, the way they were, who would have thought that I'd ever even be alive, But God has brought me through so many hurdles. And I love the Lord. I love everything about Him. I don't question the things that He's done for me or the things that He doesn't do for me because God don't get us in trouble. We get ourselves in trouble. And it's those times when we fall to our knees and we pray. It's not the times that we're happy and we're going on vacation and we're seeing our best friend of 20 years and we're going out to a great restaurant and we just hit the jackpot in the lottery. We forget about those times when it's God. We only fall to God when it's on bad times. But as a Christian in the world I live in today, I thank God every day that I wake up, put my feet on the floor. I'm a sinner saved by His grace. And He has just amazed me at the things that He's done to turn my life around to be who I am today.
That's wonderful to hear. It truly is. So that'll be so important to so many people. I did hear you mention about foster home. And so for those readers who haven't had a chance yet to read the first book or second book, how did that timeline happen as far as you went to foster care and then when did your mom marry your stepfather? So that how did that come about so that they get an understanding? When were you in foster care? And then, how did John come into your life?
Well, my father, my real father, was a drunk and he ran around on my mother and things happened in their life and he left her alone with 5 kids. And we got turned in. My mother got turned in, said that she was neglecting us. And I was maybe 5. Um, I don't actually know 100%, but I know I was very young. And so over a period of time after they turned my mom in, next thing we know, social services is packing us off into a courtroom and we get taken away from my mother and we end up in foster care. I bounced around to a couple of different places. The first place I was with my brother, and that was pure torture. And I really felt like at that point in my life that I'd rather go through what I went through later in life than to have to go through that kind of torture and to see my brother go through the torture that he went through with the first family I was with. Then as time went on, we separated, and I went to a couple. Pete in Virginia was their name. A little sweet lady and a man that treated me like I was a princess. I mean, I got new shoes, I got new socks, I got all these things that a little girl should have. And I felt like I was part of that family. Well, then my mother had met her husband and started fighting to pull us together as a family. So she ended up getting us back. I think I was probably around 8 years old, uh, getting us back and going to have this happy little family. And she done that. She done that successfully. She spent a year in prison, had a baby, and she ended up getting us back as a family. And missing my siblings, I was one of the happiest little girls in the world. But at the same time, I feared because, I went from 2 foster homes and now I've got a mother and a stepfather and I don't know anything about him. So of course, I'm overjoyed, but at the same time scared. But it wasn't long after that, when things started happening. So, probably around 9 years old, 8, 9 years old, things started happening and things just got worse as far as sexual favors and things of that went. And my mother didn't know. Um, I don't know if there was any telltale signs because as an adult now, the way I look at things now and the way I look at things then, I can't really understand how things like that happens in families with no telltale signs because there were 5 children. So I don't understand that. But anyway, that's kind of how I ended up in foster care because my dad was drunk, left my mom, left her alone. She was working a full-time job, trying to provide for her children, and that's all she was doing. I don't remember ever seeing a man in my mom's house ever. But again, I was young. But that's how we ended up in foster care. Because they took us away from my mother and took us to court, and they cured us off in separate cars, taking us to foster care. And that was for a couple of years.
Before we close today, is there anything else that you would like to share with the audience? I think that we touched on privately in a conversation a few days ago about the abuse that you suffered as a child, and you still see that same type of abuse happening in other families. And this is part of the reason that we do what we do. It's for healing primarily, but it's also to raise awareness. So, is there anything that you would want to share before we close today?
Yeah, absolutely, I do. When you've been through this type of abuse, and there's all kinds of abuse, it's not just physical, mental, emotional, sexual, there's all kinds of abuse. But when you've been through an array of different types of abuse, you kind of have trigger points. And those trigger points, I look at other kids and I see other kids and I know other kids in the world that we live in today, like right now, in the now. I know kids that are being abused. And the more that we can get the word out, the more that we can stand up, there's things out there for cancer, there's things out there for having your mammograms, there's this, there's that. Well, what about children? People bring children in this world. That's a gift from God. And that should change your life. But there's no resources that back in those days that I can recall that's any different than the resources we have in the world we live in today. Because it seems like every time I listen to the news, every time I read a newspaper, I get on Facebook, social media, or whatever have you, there's always someone else. And we need to take back that type of assault and that type of abuse that happens in the world. And the only way we can do that is to keep crying out to people. Look at your neighbor. Look at the guy walking down the street. Look at the stranger knocking at your door. Look at these people. Be aware of your surroundings because we can get the word out and we can save lives. We can save headache. We can save heartache. But you got to speak up, speak out, read the book, understand what these children, and not just in our stories, but in any other stories or people that that live right down the street. Those people may be suffering. We've got to work harder in a world that we live in today with everything else that's in front of us. We have to work harder to try to recognize these telltale signs. So getting the word out and recognizing that this abuse is real And it's everywhere. It's not in the state that I live in. It's not just in the state that you live in. It's everywhere. We just need people to come together and recognize that there's help out there, there's resources out there, there's doctors, psychologists, therapists, friends, neighbors, preachers. There's all kinds of people. Go talk to somebody, get help. Don't let it consume you and define you not to be the person that you're fully worthy of being, because that's why God made you. God made you because you're worthy. God loves you because you're worthy. And we have to recognize that.
Hey, thank you for that. And I want to say thank you for your sincere honesty and openness. You are helping truly to make a difference, and it's so, so much appreciated.
Well, thank you for having me.
So that's all for today. Before we go, we want to let you know that both of these books are available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and many other bookstores. You can also follow us on my website, www.sarahshaw.org, on Facebook at Sarah Shaw, on X, Instagram, and on YouTube. Please tune in for our next show and our special guest, Max, who shares about his childhood, his time served in the Marine Corps, and his unfortunate 10-year prison sentence. Until then, remember this verse. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze. Isaiah 43.
You've got to run.